So hey there, this is Jim Gavigan, and I have two faces that you guys probably aren't used to seeing on camera. We have Abel Padilla and Nick Vitello. I think you probably heard Nick's voice before on a video, but Abel I've just kept hidden in a corner. No, I'm just kidding. He's actually a phenomenal talent at what we're going to talk about today. And I really wanted to feature him on this one because he makes us all better. And what we're going to talk about today is visual design. And sometimes I'm not sure our customers truly appreciate what all goes into picking the right visuals for what we do for them. And one of the things is Nick, Abel, and I were having discussions yesterday. I think Nick, hit me up on Teams and said, "Hey, I want to show you this. How does this look?" And I was like, "I don't like it. Here's a couple ideas. Let's pull Abel in, because we know he's going to have great ideas." And we kind of bannered a bunch of stuff around, over the last 24 hours. I was like, we really need to just capture that so people get an understanding of how we think. And so that's what I really wanted to do today, is get these guys together, and I'm glad I'm getting Abel on camera. I've been meaning to do that for quite some time. So this is what we got from the customer. And this is actually in Excel. They actually had these are some custom visuals, best I can tell, right, Nick?
Yeah, definitely.
The thing we liked about it was the fact that you had multiple gradients, and as you can see, there's some that have red is if low is bad, so there's red to the left of the radial gauge. Others reds to the right because they want to stay low and not be high. And then there's some that are in between where, too low is not good and too high is not good. And so we kind of liked that it visually conveyed that, right? But other than that, I don't know if any of us were big fans of this particular visual. What were y'all's thoughts on this?
My first impression was it shows a lot of data, but it doesn't necessarily show what's important right away. It doesn't stand out enough. And that would
Right.
probably be my biggest critique with it. But I do like how you can have the dynamic range for dead bands. But other than that, it's a little bit cluttered, and just in general, this spreadsheet is very hard to maintain.
For sure. What was your take, Abel?
Yeah, some of the values are not displaying, so that makes it confusing.
Yep.
It looks cluttered too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so this is what, Nick was had sent to me, called me and said, "Hey, what do you think?" And Nick, why don't you kind of walk us through your thought process here, because I think that'll be kind of enlightening.
Yeah, this first iteration really was trying to replicate most of what they had in a dashboard. One thing it is lacking are the dynamic dead bands. It's not showing in the gauges, but really this came down to the first attempt at getting all the metrics correct and creating a visualization that matched pretty closely to what they had in their spreadsheet.
Right. And what was the difference between the yellow and the kind of cyan needles there? What were you trying to show there?
So in the customer spreadsheet, they had two metrics represented on each gauge. One of them was the month-to-date value for each metric, and the other was yesterday's value. So the yellow indicator indicates month-to-date, and cyan is yesterday's average.
Gotcha. And Abel, when you first saw this, kind of what was your take?
Yeah, I could see the gauges clearly. I could see the values it was trying to communicate, but I couldn't see what items or what KPIs needed attention.
Yeah.
Right? Between all of them, they look the same, and usually in dashboards we try to communicate an action item, right?
Mm-hmm.
And usually people are used to see or associate red, right, with an action item. So that was the first thought here. Which one should I pay attention to
Right.
first?
Right. And Nick, what did you have that same kind of thought? Because sometimes, like when you're the designer, you're like, "This looks good to me," because you've been so buried in these numbers and like you knew what to look for, right?
hmm
But what was your take? Like, as you were kind of laying this thing out, what were you kind of thinking? You're like, were you liking what you were seeing, or were you not?
I liked the direction it was going, but at the same time, I was very aware it was lacking exactly what Abel just
Right.
pointed out. There needs to be some way to say, quickly take a look at these and say, hey, this metric is way out of range.
So one thing that Nick and I played around with a little bit was we just drew a box around one of those gauges and the numbers, right? So at least we could kind of see, does this give us enough separation where, because for me, they were kind of running together as well. And I couldn't tell where one ended and one started. And so we were like, okay, does that help? And it did. It helped some. And, then I was asking Nick about, okay, in Pi Vision, we have this, tool called collections, right? And I was like, well, are you using collections? And one of the unique challenges of this is sometimes the current or the yesterday metric is just a single pi tag. And then other times it's a super complex calculation. And so each one of these has a little different template, depending on how the calculation has to come about. And I said, well, we got to kind of figure out how to like maybe standardize this and maybe categorize, use the category to fill out our collections. Then you have a standard look and feel. And so, we kind of toyed around with some of that too. Just, how are we going to repeat this and how can we kind of make something super uniform? So, Abel, why don't you go one slide ahead? So one of the things that we kind of talked about, was this is from some of Abel's work at another customer site. And Abel, why don't you walk us through this one, kind of the thought process? And this kind of started like us just bantering a bunch of stuff around.
Yeah, sure. So basically, in this case, the customer has main KPIs and different time frames they're monitoring it, the previous day, last 7 days, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And they have a target for each KPI for each time frame. So they wanted to see which KPIs are out of range, and in an easy way and in real time. So we put together this widget, basically display the KPI value, right, and the target on the top right.
Yep.
And then it shows this symbol. If it's pointing up, that means the value of the KPI is above the target, right? So you can infer that from the symbol. And if it's green, it's a good thing. If it's red, it's a bad thing. And then next to it is the difference between the KPI and the target.
Yep.
So you can see in the one on the right, it's below the target, it's a bad thing, and we highlight it in a way that they can look into that one first.
Yeah, and tell me where you got the idea for the little arrows. Because
yeah, sure, from the stock market displays and graphics online that you can easily see which one is going on, which one is going on.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting, sometimes you can, when you're designing things, you can actually steal from other, unlike industries or things of that nature. I thought that was kind of interesting. And so actually that's something that, we had a conversation with Katie, you and I did, Abel, last week, where we used something like that to convey some information, something she's working on for the same customer here. And it's funny, her display was very simple, but I think we spent like an hour and a half, the three of us, tweaking, moving, make that a little thinner, change that color, let's go one shade lighter, one shade darker, make it dotted. We just played around with it for a while before we were all like, okay, we all like that. I think in this case, we were trying to think, okay, can we use this? And I think all of us kind of agreed, is there a better way? And I said, and if you go back to the first slide, I said the one thing that I like about this is the ranges, all the different red boxes and the yellow. And it's like, okay, I'm green, but I'm ticking back toward yellow. Maybe I'm going the wrong direction, right? Or I'm red now, but I'm trending toward yellow, so I'm getting better, right? That was kind of the one thing I liked about the potential of this. And I was like, we don't really have that opportunity. We can go back to your slide with just the numbers on it. with this is because we can't really tell, like, where are we? Like, are we close to going yellow or are we solidly in the green? So, like, how do we convey that, right? And so I think Nick kind of took it from there. He had some ideas. So let's go to the next slide. He came up with this, which I think was a step definitely in the right direction. So, Nick, why don't you talk us through this one?
Yeah, so working with the bell, we really wanted to incorporate those set points and those dead band ranges. And this does just that. It's fully dynamic in AF. It's you can see there's 10 different bars there. Each one is a multi-state and it's associated in AF with 10 different attributes. But this displays exactly where you are in terms of how far or how close you are to the range you want to be in, and that's the direction we wanted to head to.
Yeah, I personally actually like this, but then I hadn't really imagined what it's going to look like with 14 metrics on it yet. So I was like, okay, yeah, I like that. But Bell, you had a different idea.
Yeah, because for one item only, it works. This works. But yeah, if we wanna place multiple KPIs in the same screen, it's a lot of colors popping up, and when you have many colors, many things are fighting for your attention.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
We came out with this idea in which instead of using multiple colors, we use multiple shades of the same color, right? So there are less variety in the screen that's competing for the user attention. So in this case, we pick gray for the different ranges, and the different shades communicates the criticality: green, yellow, red in the spreadsheet, but here it will be different shades of the same color. That way, there are not many colors competing for that attention, and we reserve the color red for the items that the user needs to take action. Right. That was the idea behind this concept.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting, because I remember liking the concept, but then I said, okay, is dark gray bad and light gray good? And you had to think about that for a minute. And I said, because if you go back to that first chart, like if you look at kind of the one in the middle where you have red, then a yellow, then two, the one you're hovering over, right? You have that, and then you have on the one top right, it's all red until you get to green. And then, I don't know, I highlighted another one that was the opposite, like the two left of the one we were just looking at. It's like there's a bunch of, those two, there's a bunch of green low. You want to be low on those. And I said, so do we have the opportunity here where dark is bad and light is good, and then still use the color of the bar? And I think you were like, maybe I'm okay with that. Nick was like, all right, guys, like let me mock this up. Let's just see how it looks before you guys get too down in the weeds on that. And so like, all right, we'll give you some time, and so let's kind of go to that. So Nick, why don't you walk us through this?
Yeah, this is implementing that grayscale where your darker grays are indicating you're heading in the wrong direction, and lighters is exactly where you want to be, and is set up so when you do hit that red value, horizontal bar chart turns red. So right away something's wrong here, and your eyes are drawn exactly where they need to be.
Yeah.
So.
And you can see the contrast side by side. Imagine a screen on the left versus a screen of everything on the right. Just imagine that in your mind, as those that are watching this video. Which would you rather look at? An explosion of color, on the screen that just hurts your eyes and like, what am I supposed to look at? Versus kind of like what Abel had drawn, in one of the previous slides where the red just jumps out. There was 3 red bars on that display that, Abel had out of the 12 or 14 he had put on the screen. These are the 3 that you need to pay attention to, right? And so that, I think this was a great opportunity to kind of show that. So, all right, so let's go to the next one and kind of talk about like where it is now. What I saw here was this tells you that the one on the right, the yesterday value was way out of range, right? Everybody else is in decent shape, okay? The one on the left, you're kind of trending toward the bad zone on the low side. And maybe even, I'm kind of looking at the second one that's in the KPPH is that one maybe turn those bars yellow potentially because you're in the yellow zone. You're in a warning zone. To me, we need to differentiate that from your solidity in the good, right? And maybe even the first one, I guess, probably needs to be yellow also because you're on the low side. What you struggle with on something like this though is like I don't want to do too much color, So if everything's yellow and red, I mean maybe that's actually what you want to convey here. It's like, hey, you're not actually really running that well.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add to one of the problems that we can run into with this is the first graph yesterday is below the actual threshold, the actual range of the graph. So you would never see red. So to get around this, what I'm going to do is also highlight the text red. You can see both the month-to-date value and the yesterday value above those in the first line of metrics.
Yep.
So I'm also going to turn those red along with it. Yep.
Yeah. I think that'd be a good thing. Yeah, because we've been kind of seeing this because I know I did one of these metrics and, you'd have a meter that quit working, you'd get a calc failed, or you'd get, something like ridiculously high or low. They ran for like 3 minutes out of the 24 hours and it completely throws the calculation off. And yeah, those are the things we're still going to have to battle a little bit, but I think it'll draw attention to those things, and then there'll be like other iterations, I think, is what's going to end up happening here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Bill, are you happy with the way this looks?
I think it looks pretty good. It's easy to see the item that needs attention. At the end of the day, if users are going to use it in morning meetings, right, which sometimes there's not a lot of time, right, and they can go and focus their attention on the one that's red. And I like the idea of having a yellow state shade, so you can see the secondary item that you need to look at.
Well, I mean, we'll see how that looks, but to your point, the idea of this is today on a spreadsheet that one person owns that gets updated at some interval, right? And it's a little bit cluttered and kind of hard to read. The idea is we put this in front of everybody, even the operators, so they can see, because some of these could affect their bonuses or things like that. Now people can see it in real time, and you can throw it up in a morning meeting like it's just part of the thing that they review. Maybe they just do this like on Tuesdays, right? Let's see how we're doing on this wildly important goal scorecard. Right. If they're wildly important, you would think they'd want to go over them fairly often, right? And keep them in front of people if they're wildly important. That's what the WIG is, wildly important goal. Okay, well, dang it, let's make sure that people understand. Kind of the next step that, I know Nick and I kind of talked about is, maybe doing a financial version of this dashboard. How are your dollars tracking on each of these? Same concept, same idea, same look. Just instead of this is how many of something is, this is how much it cost you. But no, I think this is neat. I think it's good for us to show, all the little design considerations and details that we think about, being on the consulting and implementation side. Because look, here's what we recognize. You guys hire us, to do things. And so therefore we need to look at all these details. And one struggle that we have, and Abel and I were talking about this off camera, is adoption. If it's ugly and no one wants to look at it, no one's going to use it. But if it's simple, it conveys the information that you want, it has a much better chance of being adopted. So, and Nick, did you get a chance to catch up with the customer today? Did they have any time? I was curious.
Not today, not yet.
Okay.
Maybe tomorrow.
Yeah, I was curious if what their thought was so far. I think they're going to be happy. I really, really do. Because you've taken like the best parts of what they had and retained those, but then made it
Right.
real time and simple for them.
Now they don't have to spend time running the Excel report. It's just there. They
It's
can
just,
just launch the dashboard.
no doubt. No doubt. Well, excellent, fellas. I appreciate you guys helping our users see like what it is that goes behind this. You know, I mean, this is not a trivial decision. You know, we've bantered back and forth, and Nick spent a fair amount of time on it. And I know you and Abel met earlier this morning, kind of running some ideas across each other's, you know, eyes. And, you know, it actually takes a lot more time than you think. And I will be honest, I really struggled with this when I started Industrial Insight. This was not my strength. Still really, I'm okay at it. You know, Bell, you're very good at it. You know, I mean, excellent at it, right? It's funny because like Nick even said to me yesterday, I got a kick out of this, was like, yeah, I just didn't see it, you know, or I just don't necessarily see it. Hasn't really clicked. It's not a skill that we're born with, right? And so we have to work at it a little bit. And it's good to show people how that comes together.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. The goal at the end is to make it easier for the user to take some kind of action, right, on the information they're seeing, and it needs to be fast. So that's the idea.
Absolutely. Nick, any closing thoughts?
Nope. It was just I had a good time with this one. I learned a lot, and yeah, really appreciate the feedback from you guys, and I'm pretty excited to see what the customers to say.
Yeah, me too. This is fun. I love to see you guys create. So it's been a lot of fun. All right. Well, we appreciate you guys watching and kind of learn a little behind the scenes action here. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, you know, give me a comment. I don't get a lot of comments. A like, a subscribe, like those tell me a lot. Like, hey, we're over the target. People like what we're doing. So, you know, give us a like and a subscribe, and we'll keep them coming. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.